Check one, 2, 3. Hey everybody, it's Michael Helms, also known as Michael the Sound Guy, and this is the Location Sound Podcast. You know, each episode we talk with location sound mixers, boom ops, and other industry pros about the various aspects of recording sound on location, whether it's for feature and independent films, TV commercials, interviews, any time where dialogue from actors is recorded. I started my career in the recording studios in New York City with some of the big artists back in the day, and later on projects for networks like HBO, Sci-Fi Channel, and the Cartoon Network. As time went by, I got out of the studio and began working in production sound. Whether you're a seasoned veteran or just starting out, thanks for joining us. My guest today is a production sound mixer and boom op based out of Phoenix, Arizona. Please welcome Josh Morrison.
Hey, Michael. How's it going?
Good. Glad you could be here today.
Yeah, glad I can be here.
All right, Josh, when you are working as a production sound mixer on set, what's in your audio kit? So just give us a rundown of all your gear, preferred mics, and everything in between. So
in my audio kit, I have a Sound Devices 633 with two Lectrosonics SRCs. For transmitters, I use the Lectrosonics SMDWBs, and I also have two sets of LTs and LRs, and I use that mainly for camera hops or for 5th and 6th wireless if I need it. I also use a Comteks 216 for clients. For microphones, I use the Schoeps CMIT 5U, the Sennheiser MKH-50, and I also have a Sennheiser 416 for backup. For lavs, I use Sanken COS-11ds all around. For timecode, I use Tentacle Sync-E. They work great, they're small, and camera guys always seem to praise me for them. For power, I use Remote Audio BDS-4U. For headphones, I use Sony MDR-7506s, and I have two boom poles, the Ambient QP480 and a K-Tech 152.
Now, I saw on your website you had the Remote Audio HN7506 headphones. So do you like those?
Yes, I actually just got those recently. They work great, but to be honest, I don't use them a lot because it's really hot and my head gets pretty warm when I wear them. So I don't use them too often. It's only for certain scenarios where I need a lot of isolation.
Well, cool. Let's talk about some of the shows you've worked on. I was looking at your resume, and you have worked on the TLC show, Where Are They Now? My 600-Pound Life. So tell us about that experience.
So that show, I was actually in charge with the voiceover recording of the season. And we met up in a hotel room with the talent. She sat on the bed, had a boom stand over her. I was Skyping with the producer in Austin, Texas, and he was just reading off the lines to her, and she just kept reciting it back. All right, so there was another project I saw, MTV's Hitched or Ditched. So what was that about? Yeah, that was a reality show where two people were dating in college. They were both near graduation, and one of them was only in the States via a school visa. Basically, after they graduate, they have to go back home. So they're deciding, the show is about them deciding, okay, do we stay here, get married, or do I have to go back to my home country? Kind of like 90 Day Fiancé, but in college? Exactly. Yeah, exactly like that. So what was the miking setup on that? It was a mix of scenes we were creating as well as interviews. So, for example, we had one scene where they went into Old Town Scottsdale and they went to a winery. And in this winery, they basically were talking to one of their best friends, asking them, what do you think we should do? What should be our next step? They were just having a conversation between them and friends, essentially. I just had 3 lav mics on them. In this scenario, and a lot of the scenes we're recreating, I wasn't able to get boom very close due to either low ceilings or it was extremely crowded or, a lot of breakable stuff was nearby. So the producer insisted that I just kept it, as low key as possible.
Any particular challenges on set that you had to deal with?
That particular set, I didn't have too many challenges. I think one of the talent, maybe I did have to re-mic her about 3 times, and I think I ended up relying on the vampire clip. That seemed to work best on that type of outfit that she was wearing at the time.
All right. Well, speaking of miking talent, what is your favorite Expendables that you like to use when you're wiring them up?
For Expendables, my go-to is the Bumblebee mounts for the Senkens. Those work pretty well. For majority of the shoots, that seems to work every time. But sometimes vampire clip, I found a lot of success with those. Sometimes just throwing on medical tape can work better than anything else. It all depends on the costume.
I picked up one of the lav bullets, and I've been using that a lot. And I have a lot of actors that they're like, hey, what is that? And so we end up having a conversation about, hey, here's how we do it. And I'll give the little demo and let them hold it. And they're like, oh, that's cool. This is great. And some people have never seen it before. So it's kind of nice to show it off.
Yeah, definitely. It's always fun interacting with people, especially on a lot of the stuff I do. It tends to be people who have never been mic'd up before, because a lot of them, they're not actors. They're just regular people who are on this show, whether it's a commercial or a reality show. So they like to ask, oh, what's this for? Or what does this do? So it's always fun talking with them.
We actually have a makeup artist that we work with a lot, and she is so inquisitive. She's always asking. I think she would be the best grip, and the best PA, because she's always asking about our jobs, and she'll, hey, tell me about the C-stand, and she comes over and she'll help us load sometimes. It's really kind of interesting, but she's like so cool, so laid back, and curious about all that stuff. So it's kind of fun.
Wow, that's a good makeup artist to have.
And she does a good job with the makeup.
That helps.
Okay, I'm looking at some feature films you've worked on. You were a boom op on These Birds Don't Fly South for the Winter. So tell me about that movie.
That movie was actually shot in, I believe, 4 different locations. I was only part of the location that was shot in Arizona. We went to a really small town. It was in the middle of nowhere, but it was what he was going for. And it was a pretty interesting experience. The entire talent was all kids. So it was, that presents a lot of challenges in itself, having to keep the mics on them. But, they were great. It was a pretty cool experience.
And were they like running around? What were some of the challenges I guess you had to deal with?
Their patience is very thin a lot of the times. So they're not used to having to wear, I think I remembered I had to put a waist strap around them because their clothes, it's so thin, it's so small, you can't really clip it on them or anything like that. So they get pretty agitated. They say, oh, this is uncomfortable. So you always try to do the best you can to make sure they're as comfortable as possible.
Yeah, we were working with this little girl recently, and she had to stand in the grass barefooted, and she was like, she's a professional actress, and it was a whole family I think we hired that were all professional actors, but she kept whining about the grass. It's itchy. I think there's bugs biting me, and it's just like, yeah,
definitely. I actually, the last time I worked with a child actor was on a short film, and this child, he had ADHD, so the problems were pretty rough a lot of the times. He would do somersaults and he would, roll on the floor and start crawling around. This is all while having the mic on. So, having to readjust the mic about 50 times during that entire production. It was a lot of fun.
Interesting. Well, as boom op for this feature, tell me a little bit about how was your mixer working with them?
Yeah, so the mixer I worked with was another local mixer. He contacted me. He asked, hey, there's a feature going on in town for a little bit. Did you want to hop on? And, I like working with him, so I took the opportunity to not only work with him, but meet him for the first time, because I talked with him, I think, over Instagram before, but it was my first time getting to meet him. It was a great experience because I got to learn a lot of how he operates and, how he approaches, different scenarios, and it was a great learning experience.
Okay. Now, were you going wireless boom?
Yes, we were going wireless for this one.
Now, how did you communicate with the mixer?
Yeah, I believe he gave me, I think it was a Comteks, I believe, yeah, it was a Comteks 216 receiver.
And I see another one here, another feature called Teenage Badass. What was that? What was that one?
So that was also working with the same mixer from before. We shot that film back in January, and it was a cool experience because before that point, I never had the opportunity to do a feature from beginning to end before, because not that many features get shot here in Arizona, at least not that many that actually has, a budget. So when this opportunity came along, I jumped on it. It was really cool because you got to experience what it was like working with a crew for, I think it was 30 days we shot, I think. So in a lot of ways, you get to really know the people that you're working with, where typically most of the jobs I do, it's, anywhere from 1 to 3 days. So you just move on to the next group and you just keep going.
Okay. What was the setup when it comes to the audio?
So for that, the mixer had a 688. He was using Wisicom receivers with the Wisicom transmitters with the Sankens. And I think for most of the talent, I think we mic'd up at one point, might have been 9 or 10, I think. So most of the talent, they requested to have it around their ankle, which I completely understand. I would prefer it around the ankle too. After 12-hour days, it's just much more comfortable having it there than anywhere else. So yeah, most of it was just around the ankle.
Okay. Now you find yourself, you wear multiple hats, I guess, at that time. So you're wiring people, you're booming,
when there's 10 people involved, it was, a constant process of the mixer relaying information such as, such and such battery is dying. That needs to change. This person's having some frequency issues. We got to rescan. And so it's just constantly, going back and forth and miking, demiking, miking, demiking. It's quite an extensive process, but I guess it makes the day go by faster, right?
Well, now you also worked on I'm looking at a ton of commercials. So tell me a little bit, is there a commercial that stands out that was like a really fun one to do?
Yeah, the Peterson Johnson law firm commercial, that was a funny script. So we shot it up in Sedona, and pretty much it was an ASMR session. But so Peterson Johnson is a local law firm, and he has this catchy jingle that everybody knows. So basically, it's an ASMR version of this guy reciting the jingle. It was pretty cool. I don't know if you've seen my picture that I posted on Instagram, but there's about 5 mics involved, but all the mics were in frame. So the only mics that were being recorded were the 3 that were on the table. So just like ASMR, he would get close to one mic, speak into it, and then he would move to the mic on the right-hand side, speak into it, and that's pretty much how that shoot went. I got a lot of messages of people asking me, they're like, what is going on here? I don't understand. What is this? And I had to explain to them that this is a creative decision. All these mics are intentionally have the bare bones windscreen as well as being in frame.
Well, out of all the projects you've worked on, what seems to be your favorite?
Well, I really enjoyed working on, in Arizona, during spring training, we get a lot of work that involves Major League Baseball. So I did a few commercials with them, and one in particular, I think the commercial was titled, "Let the Kids Play," I think the saying was, and that was a really cool shoot. If you go back and watch the commercial, they're all the players are sitting next to each other, but we only filmed one person at a time. That was all green screen. And that was a pretty cool experience because I got to meet a lot of professional players that were in AZ at the time. The crazy thing about these shoots that involves these professional athletes is that they are only allowed a very small time window to be filmed. So as soon as they arrive on set, you got to mic them up immediately. We got to film them, and they got to get out of there. There is no time for delay. So most of the time, the setup takes the longest. But you have to, you got to get it right the first time. So
interesting. I was doing one where we were micing people, and it was we were live streaming, and it was like a 10-minute interview, and I actually had a utility, and so he's micing the next group, and I've got them muted, but I've got a PFL, and I'm listening, and we're setting levels, and they haven't, we're still finishing up the interview that's going on live streaming. It was those can be they're fun, exhausting, but they're fun. At the end you go, yeah, that turned out good. So.
Yeah, definitely. It was a great experience because that commercial got aired, in giant baseball stadiums across the nation. So it was a cool opportunity of, getting messaged by people saying, "Hey, I just was at this, such and such game, and I saw the commercial you worked on." And it's a pretty cool feeling.
Did you have any kind of mentors that kind of helped you along the way when you got started?
Yeah. So. Starting out, I've been I started recording sound when I was in high school. We had a class called Media Productions. It was a very news-oriented class, but we also had the opportunity to make very short films. The mics we had in that class were very cheap, but it was a great way just to mess around and learn the basics. When it came time to look into college, I naturally gravitated towards a degree in film. I attended Arizona State University in a degree of film and media production. College was a great experience. People always joke about film degrees, and I can only speak from my own experience, but film school was a great way to interact with other film-minded people. I think I must have mixed at least 50 different short films during my time there. Of course, majority of them never went anywhere, but it was the experience that I was able to take away from them. It was a great environment to learn because you're able to practice and make mistakes without any repercussion. And at the time, all I had was, I think, a Zoom H4, a Rode NTG2, and I think one pair of G3s. It wasn't the best, but it was all I needed to learn. When it came time to graduate, I went to the office of one of my professors and asked him, "This is what I want to do. What should be my next step?" He replied with, "Okay, you need a mentor." So he gave me a number to a local mixer who's been working as a production sound mixer for over 30 years. I gave him a call, told him what my goals were, and I can exchange free labor for a chance to learn on a professional set. I started with him on the first few sets as a sound utility on several Arizona lottery commercials, Best Western commercials. Then eventually he had me boom op for Ace Hardware commercials as well as a few lottery ones as well. In this industry, you really do have to prove your worth before you can prove your paycheck. It sucks not getting paid for your time, but you can't get the jobs without having the credits, and you can't get the credits without getting the jobs. Working that many jobs for little to no money can be difficult for some people to handle, but I'm very thankful for the opportunity he gave me. I had the opportunity to experience what it was like to be on a professional high-end commercial set. I learned so much, and it really opened my eyes to just the extent of what it took to be a production sound mixer. After doing that for a while, I started getting on more sets as a mixer of my own, and through the connections I was making, I was able to eventually do it full time.
Well, you want to give a shout out to your mentor that helped you out? Yeah,
his name was Craig Parker. I mean, he taught me a lot, but I've also learned a lot from every mixer I've encountered, Every mixer I run into, I always ask a lot of questions. I pick their brain and learn how it is they operate, and I can say I've learned a lot of stuff from just about every mixer I've run into here in Arizona.
Well, let's ask the big question. What was your worst on-set experience?
I can't say I have too many bad ones. One that sticks out, and I think this has probably happened to just about anybody who works in a hot environment, but we were shooting something in the middle of the desert. This was in the middle of the summer. It was about 109 degrees out, And the person in charge was, I believe, from a very cold climate, so I don't think he realized just how bad the heat was. He was not prepared at all. He provided very minimal water for the crew. I remember looking at how much water there was and thinking to myself, that's going to last us 2 hours tops. And eventually, the water ran out. Some of the talent started to show signs of heat stroke. It was pretty terrifying. But that was just one of many issues that was going on with that production. But yeah.
We always trust that there's going to be food and water and all that stuff. And I always try to stress to people, bring your own, bring a little bit at least,
Oh yeah, 100% agree. Especially when it comes to if you're doing any kind of live event or something where you just don't know how long you're going to be going, there may not be time for snacks, or they may not provide that great of a catering. So you always gotta look out for yourself.
Well, have you ever forgotten any equipment when you were heading off to an audio project?
Well, I don't think I've ever forgotten anything extremely crucial, because typically the day before a set, it's on my mind the whole day. So I'm always thinking, okay, do I have everything? I think it's the smaller shoots where I guess I don't want to say I get cocky, but sometimes you need that kind of stress and that anticipation leading up to a big shoot that keeps you on your game at all times. And it helps remind you, okay, don't forget this, don't forget this. You double check, you triple check everything. I think we've all been there where, have you ever been driving to the set and pull over somewhere and have to open up your trunk and make sure, oh, did I bring that? Okay, I did. All right, I got to double check. I don't know. Have you ever done that before?
Oh, yeah. You're driving down the road and you're going through a mental checklist, and you don't want to be unprepared. So I'm with you on that one. If you could do it all over again and start over, in the audio industry, would you do anything different?
I feel like the path I took was pretty good. I was able to do this full time after only about 7 months after I graduated. I feel a lot of people, it might have taken them a lot more time, but I try to make it my job to find jobs when I wasn't working. So I was always working. It didn't matter if I wasn't on set. I'm always trying to network. I go to all the various, film festivals, the local film festivals, or any kind of networking event I always try to went to. I would reach out to people. I would go get lunch with people, talk with them, see what they've been up to. And I feel in a lot of ways that kind of networking I did led to me getting so much work early on.
Now, do you have any freelance services that you like to use to help get your next job?
A lot of times I'll get stuff from Facebook, surprisingly. I'm on various film-related Facebook groups, and a lot of times a producer will post there saying, hey, looking for sound mixer in Phoenix, Arizona, and some of my film friends will tag me and say, hey, PM this guy, and I tend to get a lot of work through that. Also staff me up. Once in a while, I'll get something from there.
If some of our listeners wanted to start a career in production sound, what kind of advice would you give them?
I would say be friendly to everybody you meet. You never know where your next job is going to come from. It may be the person you least expect. You just never know. Just be a cool guy to everybody. Also, it helps to love what you do. You got to love what you do. It can be cumbersome at times because other people don't always realize all the variables at play when it comes to sound. But at the end of the day, it's good to stay positive no matter what. And for starting out, it's good to take every opportunity that comes your way. I can think of several occasions where I got on a passion project where I was making little to no money, but eventually down the road, those crew members on that set would recommend me to a gig that has a big budget. You just got to take every opportunity.
Well, Josh, as we kind of start to wrap things up, what's the best way for people to connect with you online?
You can contact me via Instagram at josh.morrison_. I usually reply to everybody who messages me on there.
Okay. If they wanted to find out more about you, what's your website?
My website is jmorrisonaudio.com.
All right, cool. All right, I want to say thanks to Josh Morrison today for being on the show.
Awesome. Thank you for having me, Michael.
And a big thanks to all of our listeners out there. If you'd like us to discuss a particular topic, please send us an email at locationsoundpodcast@gmail.com. We would love for you to subscribe and leave us a comment. We're available on Apple Podcast, and for Android users, check out Google Podcast. Also, we're on Stitcher, Spotify, TuneIn Radio, and on your favorite podcast app. Until next time, remember, sound is half the picture.